I was reviewing construction plans for my newest hotel when my private phone vibrated, a number I had memorized long ago, though I had trained myself never to expect it. Zoe, my granddaughter, the only one who never cut me out of her life. "Nana, can you come to my graduation?" Her voice wavered, soft that urgent, and suddenly my penthouse office, 40 stories above downtown, felt unbearably small. Graduation? If this story touched your heart, friends, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more touching stories. Thank you for being here. 9 years. 9 years since the day my own children decided I was no longer useful. 9 years since they insisted they needed space and told me an old woman like me should consider senior housing. They had spoken those words casually, as if they were offering me a vacation instead of exiling me from the home I built for them brick by brick. I gripped the phone. "Sweetheart, your parents, they won't know," she cut in quickly. "This invitation is from me. I have the right to decide who sits in my front row." Front row. As if I were still a part of them, as if I had ever been treated like anything more than a piece of outdated furniture they no longer wanted but felt guilty throwing away. From my office window, the city spread beneath me. Glittering towers, streaming headlights, signs glowing with the golden emblem of my hotel chain. 12 hotels now, 12 more than my children ever believed I was capable of managing. "Nana, you deserve to be there," she whispered. "You supported me when no one else did. You paid for what they thought was a scholarship. You answered every late-night call. You kept me going. I want you beside me, please." I sank into my chair. The leather was soft, expensive, and worlds away from the threadbare couch where I slept the night after they forced me out. Funny how life works, how quickly the ones who underestimate you become memories, and the strangers who believe in you become your lifeline. A framed photo sat atop my desk. Zoe in her white coat during her clinical rotations. Next to it, a magazine cover featuring me, Amina Royce, the woman redefining Southern luxury. If my children saw that, they would barely recognize the woman staring back. "Where's the ceremony?" I finally asked, my voice steadier than my heartbeat. "At the University Auditorium, Saturday, 5 in the afternoon." A pause. "Mom and Dad will be there," she added carefully. Of course they would. They loved pictures, applause, public praise, anything that fed the image of a perfect family. Except the family's foundation had been cracked long before they pushed me out. They just never bothered to check the damage. "I'll come," I said at last. The gasp she let out nearly broke me. "Really, Nana?" "Yes, but Zoe, I'm not the woman they threw away. I'm not coming quietly." "I know. That's why I want them to see you." After she hung up, I stood by the window again. The city glittered like a promise. I had rebuilt myself from nothing but grit and humiliation, and now the life I forged was calling me into the spotlight they tried to hide me from. For the first time in years, I felt something sharp and bright inside me. Not anger, not fear, purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a touch of vengeance I hadn't realized I still carried. But if I had known what Zoe's graduation would reveal, not just to them, but to me, I might have prepared my heart differently. Because the truth waiting at that ceremony was far heavier than anything I had built in the last 9 years. The night after Zoe's call, sleep refused to come. I stayed on the terrace of my penthouse, the city glittering beneath me like spilled jewels, and my mind drifted backward to the day everything fell apart. I hadn't thought about that afternoon in a long time. Trauma has a habit of burying itself beneath success, but it never truly disappears. It waits, and last night, it rose again like a ghost. Back then, I was 69. Not young, but far from helpless. My joints ached sometimes, sure, but my mind was sharp, my hands steady, and my spirit still alive. I wore my navy blue dress that morning, the same one I wore for my last board meeting before I resigned to help raise Zoe. I had been proud of that sacrifice, proud to be needed. But when I walked into the living room, the air had felt wrong, heavy, rehearsed. Tia stood with her arms folded, her face too calm. Marcus sat on the couch, staring at the carpet like a guilty child. I remember setting the grocery bags on the table, smiling the same tired smile I always gave them. "What's wrong?" I asked. Tia didn't hesitate. "Mama, we've been thinking, and it's time for a change." A change. That was her gentle word for exile. "We feel like you're struggling to keep up with how things work now. It's not your fault. You're just from a different generation." My chest tightened. "If this is about the computer—" "It's not just that," she cut in. "You don't understand modern parenting or the way things run these days. And to be honest, your advice isn't helping." Advice. That same advice had rescued them a dozen times. That same advice had built the stability they stood on. Marcus finally lifted his head. "Mama, you should be resting, not taking care of Zoe. You need a place where you can be comfortable, where people your age are." People my age. They were talking as if I were already wilting. I remember standing there, gripping the edge of the table, the humiliation burning beneath my ribs. "Where exactly do you expect me to go?" Tia exchanged a glance with Marcus. "We found an assisted living complex. It's clean, nice. They have activities for seniors." "Seniors?" My voice cracked. "I'm not some forgotten relic you can store away in a facility." "Tia's right," Marcus said gently. "You'll be better off there." Better off, meaning far away. My throat tightened. "And what about Zoe? I watch her every day." "We hired a babysitter, someone younger, someone up to date." Up to date. The word sliced sharper than any insult. It didn't matter that I left my job to help them raise their daughter. It didn't matter that I sold my condo to help them buy that very house. It didn't matter that every sacrifice I made was carved from my bones. In that moment, I was nothing but an inconvenience. "I have nowhere else," I whispered. It was the only time in my life I ever admitted something so vulnerable. Marcus shrugged. "You'll figure something out. You always do." That was the last thing they said to me before I packed a small suitcase and walked out the door. No one offered to help me. No one hugged me. No one asked if I was okay. The woman they'd discarded walked away in silence. The woman they would soon meet again was someone entirely. What they never knew was that hitting rock bottom didn't break me. It revealed who I truly was. And the decision I made hours after leaving their house would change the next 9 years of all our lives. The day they pushed me out, I walked until my legs trembled. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. I ended up at a quiet park, the kind of place where people rushed past without meeting your eyes, especially if you looked like someone life had chewed up and spat out. I sat on a worn wooden bench, clutching my small suitcase, and for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to cry. I wasn't the type of woman who cried often. Responsibilities rarely leave room for tears. But everything inside me, every heartbreak, every humiliation, every sacrifice denied, unraveled all at once. People passed me like I was invisible. Maybe I was to them. After 3 hours, the storm inside me softened. My face was tight from dried tears, but my mind had sharpened. I've always believed that despair has a strange twin, clarity, and that clarity whispered something I wasn't expecting. "Amina, you are not done." By sunset, I made a decision. I would not crawl back. I would not beg. I would not disappear into a senior home and wait for life to fade quietly. If they believed I was outdated, useless, incapable, I would prove them wrong. The next morning, with my final $62 in my pocket, I bought a newspaper, an actual print one because I didn't own a smartphone then. I scanned pages until an ad caught my eye. Small roadside inn seeking experienced administrator, flexible arrangements. It felt like a crack of light in a long tunnel. The inn was 40 minutes outside the city, a faded building with peeling paint, a flickering sign, and the smell of mold baked into the walls. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Harper, were an elderly couple who looked even more tired than their business. "We can't pay much," Mr. Harper said, pushing up his glasses. "Business has been slow for years." "How much do you owe?" I asked. He blinked. "Oh?" "For repairs, for overdue maintenance, for everything you've patched instead of fixed." He stared at me as if I'd peeled back the building's drywall with my bare hands. "Well, a lot," he admitted. "Then let me propose something," I said, feeling a spark ignite inside me. "I'll run the place, clean it, organize it, modernize it. If profits improve, I get a percentage. If they don't, I'll leave quietly." Mrs. Harper looked at her husband, hope flickering in her cloudy eyes. "She sounds like exactly what we need." And that's how it began. For 3 months, I lived in a tiny room with a lumpy mattress, waking before dawn and working until midnight. I fixed leaky pipes with YouTube tutorials, scrubbed mildew off shower tiles, negotiated better prices with suppliers, and created a website from scratch. The children who said I didn't understand the modern world would have been astonished watching me troubleshoot HTML at 2 in the morning. Slowly, guests returned. First a couple, then a family, then weekend travelers. Word spread that the little forgotten inn had transformed into a cozy, welcoming home away from home. By the end of month 3, we were fully booked for the first time in 21 years. And when Mr. Harper asked how I had done it, I said simply, I remembered who I was before life convinced me to shrink. But that little inn was only the beginning. What came next would turn a flicker of hope into an empire and lead my children to discover a truth they never imagined. The 4th month at the inn was different. It wasn't survival anymore, it was momentum. The Harpers had started smiling again, greeting guests with pride instead of apology. And I was rediscovering parts of myself I thought motherhood had swallowed. One cool morning, while tallying numbers at the front desk, I realized something astonishing. We weren't just profitable, we were consistently filling all 15 rooms and turning people away. That's when I knew the inn had reached its ceiling, and I wasn't the type of woman who stopped at ceilings. I asked Mr. Harper to meet me in the small dining room after breakfast service. The sunlight streamed through the windows, reflecting off the polished tables I had refinished myself. He sat slowly, as if he already knew something big was coming. "What's going on, Miss Royce?" he asked, his gentle eyes. "I want to buy the building next door," I said. He blinked. "Buy it?" "Yes. It's been vacant for years. If we renovate and connect the structures, we could expand to 30 rooms, add a real breakfast lounge, maybe even a garden area in the back." He let out a soft whistle. "That's ambitious." "Ambitious is just another word for necessary," I said, "and I've run enough numbers to know it will work." But ambition needed money I didn't have. "Let me talk to the bank," I told him. His eyebrows rose. Banks aren't too eager to give loans to older folks, especially those without collateral. I smiled. "Then it's a good thing I'm not planning on going in there as an older folk. I'm going in as the woman who took your failing inn and turned it around in 90 days. That afternoon, I walked into the bank wearing my best pressed blouse and a confidence I hadn't felt since my corporate days. The loan officer looked at me the way people often looked at women my age, politely dismissive, until I laid out the spreadsheets. Revenue charts, customer reviews, forecast projections, the website traffic I personally boosted by learning SEO late at night. When I finished, he sat back slowly. "You did all this yourself?" "Yes, and I'm just getting started." He approved the loan. Just like that, I wasn't sleeping in a tiny, damp room anymore. I was overseeing construction, negotiating contracts, choosing paint colors, hiring staff. I was alive in a way I hadn't been in decades. Within a year, the inn expanded to 30 rooms and a warm cafe that drew locals as much as travelers. Guests began asking if we had other locations. Not yet, I'd say with a smile. Not yet. 2 years later, I opened my second property, this time under a name I chose myself, Royce Retreats. By the 5th year, I had 4 hotels across 2 states, and with each opening, I felt myself stepping farther away from the woman my children dismissed and closer to the woman I was always meant to be. But through it all, Zoe remained my anchor. Our late-night phone calls, her whispered updates about her parents, her dreams of becoming a doctor, they kept me grounded. They reminded me why I kept pushing. She once said, "Nana, you're unstoppable." And she was right. But while I was building myself up, my children were quietly crumbling. I didn't know it yet, but soon, the consequences of their choices would come knocking directly on my doorstep. Because success doesn't just attract admiration, it attracts attention. And sometimes the very people who abandoned you come back when they think you're valuable again. By the 6th year of running my hotels, something inside me had settled into a quiet, powerful rhythm. Mornings started with strong coffee and porcelain cups I personally selected. Afternoons were spent reviewing reports from my managers across multiple cities. Evenings belonged to Zoe, her calls about medical school, exams, and every triumphs in between. I was 74, and for the first time in my life, I felt like the world had decided to meet me on equal footing. Then the magazine cover came. It started innocently enough. A regional business publication requested an interview after hearing about the rapid rise of Royce Retreats. I thought it would be a small story buried in the back. Instead, my face, silver hair, sharp suit, confident smile, landed on the front page under the title, "The Woman Who Redefined Southern Hospitality, Amina Royce." I framed the issue and placed it on my office shelf, proud but not boastful. I had earned every inch of that success. What I didn't know was that the magazine would end up in the lobby of the dentist's office my daughter visited. Zoe called me the next day, breathless. "Nana, Mom saw your picture." I froze. I had always assumed they lived blissfully unaware of the empire I was building. As far as they knew, I was tucked away somewhere in a quiet retirement room, knitting or playing bingo. Nothing dangerous, nothing impressive, nothing threatening. "What did she say?" I asked. She stared at the cover for a long time. Then she asked me if it was you. "And what did you tell her?" "The truth she deserved. Lots of women are named Amina." I smiled. Clever girl. But Zoe wasn't done. "Dad's been asking around too. I heard them arguing in the kitchen last night. They think the woman in the magazine might be you, but they don't understand how that's possible." Of course they didn't. They had built a whole story in their heads about who I was. Weak, dependent, finished. They couldn't imagine I had risen without them. 2 weeks later, while I was finalizing a deal for my 12th property, my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in years. Marcus. "Mama?" His voice cracked. It's me." I didn't respond immediately. I had forgotten what it felt like to hear him say "Mama," and it didn't land the way he expected. The word felt foreign now. "How did you get this number?" I finally asked. "Zoe gave it to us. We need to talk. We've seen some things." "Define some things." "Mama," he whispered like he was confessing to a priest, "is it true you own hotels?" His disbelief stung more than the insult he delivered years ago. In his mind, I was still the helpless woman he brushed aside, still incapable, still small. "Why are you calling me now?" I asked, my voice calm but icy. Silence poured through the phone. I already knew the answer, but I wanted to hear them say it. "Mama, we want to see you." "After 6 years?" I asked. "Why now?" Another silence. And that silence, more than any apology, told me everything I needed to know. They weren't calling out of love. They were calling because they smelled opportunity. But I wasn't the same woman who once begged for a place to stay, and the conversation that followed would mark the beginning of a reckoning they never saw coming.
3 months passed after Marcus's call, months filled with expansion meetings, contractor negotiations, and preparations for the opening of my 13th hotel. I kept busy, not because I needed the distraction, but because their sudden interest in my life amused me more than it hurt. Zoe, meanwhile, kept me updated. "Nana, Dad lost his job," she whispered during one of our calls. "He's been out of work for a month, but Mom keeps telling relatives it's temporary restructuring." I felt no joy at their hardship, but I also didn't feel pity. The truth was simple. They had chosen their distance. Now they were living in it. "And Mom?" I asked. "She's stressed. They're behind on their mortgage. The house is at risk." The same house I once paid the down payment for. Life has an extraordinary sense of irony. Worse still, Zoe overheard them discussing me one night. "Nana, they're planning to show up at your office without warning. They think if they surprise you, you'll have to talk to them." I laughed, not bitterly, genuinely. The audacity was almost nostalgic. "Let them come." The next morning, I called my assistant, Emery. "I need the main conference room cleared at 3 tomorrow afternoon," I instructed. "Have all 15 hotel managers join via video." "That's quite a lineup," she said carefully. "May I ask the purpose?" "I'm anticipating visitors," I replied, "and I want to properly introduce them to the world they once believed I wasn't capable of understanding." The following day, at exactly 2:37 p.m., Emery's voice buzzed through my intercom. "Ms. Royce, you have 2 visitors at reception. They say they're your family." "Let them wait," I replied calmly. "I'll be down in 15 minutes." 15 minutes, exactly. When I finally walked into the small reception room, they both stood from the leather sofa as if it were too luxurious to touch for long. Tia looked older, tired, her makeup trying and failing to hide the strain. Marcus looked worn, 10 pounds lighter than I remembered, his suit wrinkled from years of disuse. "Mama," Tia breathed, "you look incredible." I nodded politely. Marcus, Tia. An uncomfortable silence. "We wanted to talk," Marcus began. We know we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I repeated, walking past them to pour myself water. "Mistakes are forgetting birthdays or misplacing keys. What you did was abandonment dressed up as tough love." Tia's eyes welled. "We were overwhelmed. We didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I cut in. "Your actions were deliberate. The consequences were deliberate." Before they could respond, my phone buzzed. "Ms. Royce, the managers are all connected. The bank representative is seated. The mayor is on standby." "Thank you," I replied. "I'll be right there." I turned to my children. "Excuse me, I have a meeting to lead." "A meeting," Marcus echoed. "With the mayor?" "And others," I said lightly. "We're finalizing a multi-million-dollar expansion. I'm sure you understand the urgency." Their faces were priceless. Shock, confusion, disbelief all tangled together. "You can wait here," I added, "if you truly wish to continue this conversation." Their silence was answer enough. I walked out, leaving them stunned in the wake of a reality they never imagined for me. But after that meeting, when I returned to the waiting room, the conversation that unfolded would force them to confront every lie they told about me and every truth they tried to ignore. 2 hours later, the expansion meeting wrapped and the conference screens faded to black. The managers congratulated me,
The bank rep shook my hand. The mayor thanked me for the upcoming tourism impact. It was a successful meeting, another step in the empire I had built brick by brick, scar by scar. I walked back to the waiting room, heels clicking across the marble floor. Marcus and Tia stood when I entered. They looked smaller this time, shrunk, as if the building itself reminded them that they no longer occupied the center of my world. "How did the meeting go?" Marcus asked, his voice unsteady. "Productive. We approved 3 new hotel projects and a $1.5 million community initiative." Tia blinked rapidly, as if numbers that large were foreign to her vocabulary. "Mama," she began softly, "we talked while you were gone, and we want to apologize, truly." "For what exactly?" I asked, folding my hands behind my back. "For everything," Marcus said. "For the things we said, for pushing you away, for acting like you were a burden." I tilted my head. Is that regret or fear? Tia flinched. "It's regret." "And the money?" I added, "because I know you didn't come here only to apologize." The silence was thick and honest. "We're in trouble," Marcus finally admitted. "We're behind on our mortgage. I lost my job, and we thought you might help us." "Interesting," I said, sitting down slowly. "When I needed help, you offered me a one-way ticket to a retirement facility. When you need help, I'm suddenly your mother again." "Mama, please," Tia whispered. Tears clung to her lashes. "We're not asking because you're rich. We're asking because—" I raised a hand. "Because what? Because you realized the woman who raised you wasn't as disposable as you thought?" Neither of them spoke. "Let me be very clear," I continued. "Money is not the issue. Respect is. Integrity is. History is." I could see the truth settling on their shoulders like stones. And then the door opened. Zoe stepped in. She wore her hospital internship scrubs, her ID badge hanging from her neck. Her expression was firm, but her eyes softened when they landed on me. "Nana, did I interrupt?" "No, sweetheart. Come in." Marcus and Tia stared at her in confusion. "Zoe," Tia said slowly, "what are you doing here?" Zoe took a breath. "I work here. I've been helping Nana with administrative tasks on weekends. She's been supporting my studies." Marcus blinked. "Supporting? How?" I watched Zoe gather her courage. She had always been brave, but this was different. This was truth-telling. "Nana paid for my entire education. My tuition, my books, my housing, all of it." Tia's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus paled. "You told us you had a scholarship," he whispered. "I did. A scholarship Nana created just for me. If the room had been cold before, it froze solid now." "And there's something else," Zoe added, her gaze locking on to her parents. "Nana and I never stopped talking. Not once. I kept our relationship a secret because I saw how badly you treated her, and I refused to lose the only person who believed in me." Tia let out a choked sound. Marcus looked away completely. Zoe walked to my side and slid her hand into mine. "You abandoned her," she said. "I didn't." The truth hit them harder than anything I could have said. But they still hadn't heard the biggest revelation, the one that would shatter every illusion they held about control, loyalty, and who truly held power in our family. Graduation day arrived with the kind of clarity the sky rarely gives. Blue, sharp, almost symbolic. I woke early, not from nerves, but from a quiet anticipation that settled into my bones. It felt like the world had been holding its breath for this moment. I dressed deliberately. A cream suit tailored to perfection, polished low heels that whispered rather than clacked, my mother's pearls, the ones I never felt worthy of wearing when I lived beneath my children's roof. I fastened them with steady hands. Today wasn't just Zoe's day. It was my unveiling. My driver opened the Mercedes door exactly at 4. The car glided through the city like it belonged to the pavement. Smooth, confident, acknowledged. When we pulled up to the university auditorium, heads turned, cameras paused, conversations stopped mid-sentence. I stepped out into the golden light, and for a moment even the breeze stilled. A reporter approached me immediately. "Ms. Royce, may we have a photo? We heard you're the major donor for the new medical research lab." I smiled politely. "Today is about my granddaughter. Please make sure she gets the spotlight she deserves." But as he snapped the picture, I saw movement behind him. A beat-up sedan pulling into the lot. Marcus and Tia stepped out, overdressed but underprepared. Their eyes widened when they saw me standing with the press, as if I were royalty. They hesitated, then approached. "Mama," Tia said breathlessly, "you look... wow." "Thank you," I replied coolly. "The ceremony starts soon. We should go in." "What row should we sit in?" Marcus asked timidly. "I have assigned seating. You'll be directed to your section." Section. Not beside me, not near me, not next to the granddaughter they assumed they owned. Inside the auditorium, an usher guided me to the front row marked by a polished plaque. Reserved, Amina Royce, guest of honor. Marcus and Tia froze behind me. Their seats were 5 rows back, standard family placement. They didn't dare complain. The dean approached me, shaking my hand warmly. "Ms. Royce, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you again for your extraordinary contributions." "My pleasure," though I could feel my children's stunned eyes burning holes in my back. The ceremony began. Names were called. Applause swelled and softened in waves. Then Zoe, Lorraine Moran Royce, summa cum laude. The entire auditorium erupted. I stood, I clapped, my heart swelled. Zoe walked across the stage in her white coat, chin high, pride radiating from her like light. But then something happened that no one expected. The dean cleared his throat. "And this year's recipient of the Amina Royce Academic Excellence Award is Zoe Lorraine Moran Royce." I heard Marcus's gasp even from the front row. Zoe accepted her award, then turned her head and looked directly at me. Not at her parents, me. After the ceremony, she ran into my arms. "Nana, we did it!" I whispered into her hair. "No, you did it." Marcus and Tia approached, but Zoe stiffened. Her face softened only when she looked at me again. "Nana reserved a private room at the Laureate to celebrate, and I want you there." She paused, then added, "I want Mom and Dad there too, but only if it won't ruin your evening." I studied her, my brave girl, trying to build bridges none of us ever learned to walk. "Of course," I said gently. "Tonight is about unity, not old wounds." But deep down, I knew unity wasn't what waited at that dinner table. No, what waited there was truth. Raw, unfiltered, unavoidable. Because when we finally sat together in that private dining room, the conversation that unfolded didn't just rewrite our family, it exposed exactly what they feared most. I no longer needed them, but they desperately needed me. The private dining room at the Laureate shimmered with soft candlelight and quiet elegance. crystal glasses, white linens, and a table set for 8. It was the kind of room reserved for foreign diplomats and celebrated artists. Tonight, it belonged to us. Zoe sat beside me, glowing with the thrill of graduation. Across from us sat Marcus and Tia, rigid and uneasy, as if the chairs themselves demanded honesty. They scanned the room, taking in every sign of wealth they once thought unattainable for someone like me. A waiter poured sparkling water. The silence stretched. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "Mama, thank you for including us." "Zoe invited you," I corrected gently. "I simply paid for the room." Tia winced, but she didn't argue. Dinner began. Seared salmon, truffle risotto, roasted baby carrots glazed with citrus. Marcus stared at the menu like it was printed in another language. Halfway through the main course, he finally spoke. "Mama, we want to make things right. Truly, we know we treated you terribly." I set down my fork carefully. "Treated? Past tense?" He swallowed. "We're trying to change. We've both been reflecting. And financially cornered," I added. Tia's voice cracked. "It's not just about money. We were wrong. All these years, we painted a picture of you that wasn't fair. We said things, cruel things, because we were scared." "Scared of what?" I asked. "Of failing. Of not being enough. Of depending on you too much. We thought pushing you away made us independent." Independence. Funny how often that word is used to justify cruelty. Zoe reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers were warm, grounding. "Nana, they're trying." Maybe they were. Maybe regret had finally found them the way success had finally found me. I inhaled slowly. I'm not a woman who lives in the past, but I don't pretend it didn't happen. I was hurt deeply, cut loose at the very moment I needed family most. Tia wiped her eyes. "We can't undo what we did, but we want to earn your trust again." I studied both of them. Older, humbled, stripped of the arrogance they wore like armor for so long. Trust isn't given, it's built, brick by brick, action by action. Marcus nodded. "We understand. And there are rules." They straightened. Rules meant structure, safety, boundaries. "One," I said, raising a finger, "you will never again speak to me as if my age makes me lesser." They nodded quickly. 2, our relationship will be rebuilt slowly, not rushed because you're in a crisis. Tears fell down Tia's cheeks. "Yes, we accept that." "And 3, I said, voice steady, "you must learn to stand on your own feet, not mine." Marcus's voice cracked. "How do we begin?" "You begin by learning who I am now, not who you believed I was." Zoe squeezed my hand. "Nana, that's fair." The waiter brought dessert, lavender creme brulee, sweet, delicate, surprising, much like the moment itself. As we ate, the atmosphere warmed. Tentative smiles replaced cracked voices. Awkwardness softened into something that resembled hope. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a doorway. A doorway I was willing to keep open as long as they walked through it with humility. Later that night, as my driver opened the car door for me, Zoe hugged me tightly. "You changed my life, Nana, and you're changing theirs too." "Maybe," I murmured, "or maybe they're finally ready to change themselves." She smiled. "Either way, you're the reason we're all here." As the city lights reflected off the car windows, I realized something profound. I hadn't won by becoming wealthy. I hadn't won by proving them wrong. I had won because I rebuilt my life on my terms and invited only those who respected it to share it with me. No more shrinking, no more begging, No more believing my worth came from being needed. I finally belonged to myself, and for the first time in decades, that was enough. If only they had realized sooner, sometimes the strongest version of a woman is the one who rises after everyone stops believing in her.